Hey guys, it's Luke and today I am going to be starting a reading vlog for Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare, the third and final book in the Last Hour series. I have not done a dedicated spoiler-filled reading vlog for about a year. The last time I did one was last February for House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. I did do like my reading 7 books in 7 days vlogs last summer, but those were all spoiler free, so I'm really excited to be coming back with none other than Chain of Thorns, one of, if not my most anticipated book of the year. I have 2 videos for this series actually already. I have a review and recap of Chain of Gold, which I can link in the description box below, and I also have a video similar to this one where I read and vlogged my experience with Chain of Iron, the second book in the series. So I thought that I wanted to bring vlogs back to my channel, and I knew that Chain of Thorns was coming out, so I decided to reread the first 2 books and also decided that I would vlog my experience reading this one. I do want to say I have already started this book, but I didn't think it would be that big of a deal because I started it during the week. I should mention it's Saturday, so it's the first day of my February President's Week break off from school, which thank God I definitely needed that. But yeah, I do want to say that I did start this. I just didn't really have time during the week to actually start this video, so I was like, you know, I'm just gonna start reading the book. The most I'll get through is the first 200 pages. How much can happen in the first 200 pages? Apparently a lot, because I don't even think I'm actually 200 pages into the book yet. I know I'm on chapter 10. Yeah, I'm on page 177, and already so much has happened, so definitely buckle up. I'm gonna do a pretty long clip right now, just going through what I've read thus far and talk about that. Basically, the way that I do these videos, if you don't know, is I kind of give you reading updates and talk about my overall feelings on the book and recap what's happened so far and my thoughts on all of the different scenes, and kind of make predictions for what's going to happen going forward and all of that stuff. I'm so excited to continue reading this book. I haven't read it for 2 or 3 days just because I've had so much to do and I wanted to wait until break, and I'm going to go fully into this book, immerse myself the entire day. My goal is to get to page 450 or 500. I feel like I can do it just because I'm so in the mood to read today, and I just really want to get further into this book. My goal right now, though, is to kind of recap what I've read so far, so I'm just going to start at the prologue. Obviously, it picks up where Chain of Iron left off, and we have James, Magnus, and Will trying to find Lucie after she's disappeared, after bringing Jessie back from the dead, and we find out in the first chapter of the book that she is in Malcolm Fade's house in Cornwall, I believe. I originally thought that she would be in Los Angeles, where the Dark Artifices takes place, because obviously Malcolm is a huge character in that series. Also, I should totally mention that this entire video is going to be spoiler-filled for the entire Shadowhunter Chronicles, so be forewarned. It's going to be in the video title, so I don't think you should worry, but anyway, yeah, so I thought that was originally going to happen, but we kind of, in the beginning, have Lucie dealing with that. She, she's still dealing with, the effects of her necromancy, so she doesn't really, she knows that Jessie and Malcolm are around her, but she can't really, talk to them or anything. She's kind of, locked in. The beginning scenes, we have Cordelia and Matthew in Paris, which was really exciting. I really thought that was an exciting thing to see, and I really was interested in seeing how their relationship would develop, and again, I'll talk about that a little bit more. The next scene, again, is just Magnus and them trying to find Lucie. We cut to Lucie, which I talked about. Oh, we have Ariadne Bridgestock, and she basically finds out that someone from the Oslo Institute, it says, most of the deeds noted seemed petty, small, or hearsay. The report that the head of the Oslo Institute would not meet with Tessa Herondale, one of the kindest ladies Ariadne had ever known, was revolting. The head of the Oslo Institute should have been reprimanded. Instead, the event was recorded here as if it had been the Herondale's fault. So she's basically going through her father's notes, and her father's obviously the Inquisitor. and she finds out that there's some weird stuff going on with the Oslo Institute, and that people may be finding out about Tessa Herondale's like real lineage and how she is the daughter of Belial. We find in the second chapter, Lucie actually wakes up, and she's they're trying to figure out how they're going to get Jessie back into London society, into the Enclave. And so they're trying to figure out what to do with that. We have Christopher and Thomas. We deal with some stuff with Thomas and Alistair, how they're going to try to tell their family what's happened, or like about their relationship, and how they like realize their feelings for one another, and also how they're going to like breach that subject, since a lot of people really hate Alistair considering what he's done to all the people, so like all the people in the friend group. So that's like a conflict of this book that's kind of like brought up. Oh, we have in the second chapter also Grace. She's in the Silent City, and she and Jem are kind of talking, and there's all this stuff about like how she can't really be tried by the mortal sword, because then she'll like, because she knows things that the rest of like all the other Nephilim can't really know, so that would be like a whole ordeal, and they're kind of just keeping her there trying to figure out like anything they can about Tatiana and her real plan. Yeah, we have some more stuff with Lucie and Malcolm, which was interesting. Yeah, we kind of go back to James and them trying to find Lucie, all this stuff. There's this really sweet moment where James kind of realizes the how serious the Jessamyn's death was for Will. We obviously had that in Clockwork Princess, where she dies in his arms, and James is kind of like really processing that and like internalizing it, which was really interesting. We have Matthew and Cordelia going to like the Hell Party, and this was really interesting. Madame Dorothea actually shows up, and I was like, why is that name so familiar? And I remembered that she's in the very first like book that Cassandra Clare ever published, City of Bones, and she is like the woman that like, she's kind of like I don't know, there's something with like Jocelyn and all that, and she was like disguised as a demon or something. I don't know, but that was really interesting. And basically we have her do like almost like a seance, and we have Elias, who is Cordelia's father, like speak through her, and he says, in time there will be sorrow but not regret, there will be quiet but not peace. They wake. If I can tell you nothing else, let me tell you this. They are waking. It cannot be stopped. We who are already dead, we are the lucky ones. And then he basically, Madame Dorothea, like, collapses. Again, we go back to Malcolm and them. They're trying to figure out, again, what to do with Jessie and how they're going to, like, bring that up, because they can't really know that necromancy was performed. Malcolm is trying to like convince Lucie to bring Annabelle Blackthorn back from the dead, which obviously is a whole plot in the Dark Artifices, but she was like, you know, the only reason we were able to bring Jesse back from the dead is because his body was perfectly preserved in that coffin at Blackthorn Manor, whereas Annabelle, like, we don't know where she is. So that was one thing. And then James, Will, and Magnus end up showing up at Malcolm's house. We go back to Cordelia. She kind of has like a bad dream. Matthew, we have this sweet moment where Matthew like holds her hand until she falls asleep. James, Magnus, Lucie, Jessie, and Malcolm talk. They kind of figure out a plan for like how they're going to deal with Jessie. They decide that Jessie is going to come back in society and be like Jeremy, I think it's Jeremy Blackthorn, because there was like a line that went to America, which I'm guessing is the line that's in Los Angeles. I don't know. But Malcolm knows that, but there's like their whole family tree is a little bit muddy, so like they wouldn't really notice or like think anything of it if this random Blackthorn just kind of came into society. And Jessie, like, not a lot of people really know what Jessie looks like, so it wouldn't be that big of like, not many people would really realize that he's Jessie Blackthorn and not Jeremy Blackthorn. We have a scene with Anna and Ariadne. There's kind of a whole thing where they're at like some party or something. Ariadne, it says, from the pocket of her coat she withdrew a sheet of paper, crumpled and black at its edges, and handed it to Anna. It was obviously a letter with the Inquisitor's sign-off and messy signature halfway down the page, but it was singed with small holes and its first page was missing, and it's basically, again, just a letter from the Inquisitor. We don't know who it's to, but they're kind of presuming that it's blackmail. Anna says it might not be what it looks like. He didn't send this for one thing. And then there's kind of like they're hypothesizing about what the blots are. And then there's all this stuff about like different, like I can't really remember, but it's still kind of mysterious at the point where I like have reached in the book. Ariadne, she kind of like leaves her house because she lets them know. She lets her parents know that she is a lesbian and that her, initial engagement to Charles was like, a sham. And she ends up fleeing because they don't accept her. And she tells Anna this. Oh, Anna says, "You take the bedroom, I will sleep here on the chaise lounge. It is comfortable enough." So we kind of see their relationship come together a little bit more. Yeah, so this is a part where Malcolm says, "Jessie Blackthorne cannot join the London Enclave, but because of my history, my research, nobody knows more about the Blackthorne family than I do. If I can find a means by which Jessie can be returned to Shadowhunter Society without suspicion, could we then consider this whole matter put behind us?" The whole thing about the necromancy and everything. And then they come up with that whole plan about Jeremy. And we have James, like, not really being able to sleep. He's kind of just thinking about all of this stuff, with Belial. Oh, he sees Jem at the house, and Jem says, "I know you well, James. I know you do not like to be pitied, and you imagine this is what would happen if you spoke the truth about Grace, and about what Grace and her mother did to you." And then Jem says, "Have I asked you to conceal the truth of what Grace and Tatiana did to you? The Silent Brothers want the truth withheld from the Clave, but I understand that you may need to tell your family to ease your mind and theirs, but I trust that if you do, you will emphasize that it should not become widely known yet. It was my impression that perhaps you did not want anyone to know, that you would be relieved that it remained a secret." Yeah, and so Jem is kind of asking James to hold off because he says, "It is my task as a Silent Brother to gain greater understanding. Whatever Belial's plan is, I do not believe he is done with us. With you, he has reached for you in many ways through Grace, but when he finds that door is closed, it would be better to know where he will turn next." I should also mention that another reason Jessie can't really come back into society is because obviously Belial was using his body to like kill all of the Shadowhunters, like Elias and Lillian Highsmith and Philomena, so that was like another whole thing that was happening. We have Thomas and Alistair kind of walking together and meeting up in Cornwall Gardens. There is a thing about like basically Thomas wrote like this thing for Christopher because Christopher was doing an experiment, like this like kind of a rant letter or whatever. And it was like, "Dear Alistair, why are you so stupid? I brush my teeth, don't tell anyone." That was like what it was cut down to, and it was sent to Alistair, and he's like a little bit angry about that. And then they get attacked by demons, and Alistair obviously has Cortana now because Cordelia cannot use Cortana, or else Lilith will be called because she's now Lilith's paladin. Lucie basically comes to James and says, "James, Jessie's going to need you. There are things you can help him with that I can't. Being possessed by Belial, having the marks of dead Shadowhunters on his skin, it's hurting him. I can see it in his eyes." And then obviously Malcolm tells them his whole idea about how they can help Jessie. Oh, and then Matthew and Cordelia try to go to this ball, but then the person that's like guarding the door tells Cordelia, "No entrance for you, paladin." So he basically knows that that she is Lilith's paladin. Oh, and then there was obviously a whole demon fight, these Naga demons, and Cordelia ends up, trying to save Matthew, and in doing so summons Lilith because, again, she's raising a sword or a weapon, and Lilith ends up showing up, and then she says, "I know you couldn't stop yourself, little warrior. It is in your blood, the need to fight." I love Lilith, by the way. I loved that whole twist in Chain of Iron that she came back. Lilith asks where Cortana is, and Cordelia's like, "Girl, I don't know." Cordelia's like, "I would like you to kiss me," to Matthew, and all of this stuff. But Christopher visits Grace in the Silent City. He says, "I've been working on this new project, a kind of amalgam of science and Shadowhunter magic. It's meant for sending messages at a distance, and I made progress, but now there are some snags. I'm at an impasse." We kind of have, like, that whole thing. He, like, gives her his, like, plan so she can read it over because he's, like, likes her, obviously. Obviously, we have Matthew and Cordelia kissing. There's, like, this full page illustration, which I love that they're in this book. I feel like that's always like a nice touch. They were in Greedy Mare and Darkness as well, and it was really nice. It was like really cool to see. And then they get back to the rooms, and James is there. There's, like, all of this stuff. There was, like, a big revelation where Cordelia finds out that Matthew has actually been drinking without her knowing. Then Thomas and them go to, like, a meeting at the Institute. There's, like, this whole thing where, like, Cordelia and James talk about things. He's like, if you love Matthew, let me know. And Matthew's like, you know, like, all this stuff about Grace, because there was that whole misunderstanding at the end of Chain of Iron. Oh, and then we have Ariadne and Anna go to Ariadne's house so she can gather all of her things. And then they find out that her father, Maurice, the Inquisitor, is, like, not doing well. Oh, and then Magnus appears in Paris, and he says, the Inquisitor has returned, and the news he has brought back is bleak. Tatiana Blackthorn has escaped from the Ottoman Citadel and joined forces with Belial. You must return with me to London post-haste. There is much to be discussed. And then the last chapter I read was chapter 9, and they all kind of go back to London. There's all of this stuff with, like, Will, and he's talking about, he says, like, traveling to the Ottoman Citadel is not easy. It took Bridgestock a full day via Reykjavik Institute to get there, all of this stuff. And they told him that Tatiana was not there, but when he protested, they explained that this was not unusual, that she often went for long walks across the volcanic plains, and obviously we know that because at the end of Chain of Iron, Belial kind of sweeps her away. Bridgestock seems to have demanded that the Iron Sisters bring him something of Tatiana's he could use to track her, and then Will is kind of just telling this, like, elaborate story about, like, the Iron Tombs, which is where the Iron Sisters and Silent Brothers are buried, which is kind of like a new thing, I think. I don't think that's ever been introduced in other Shadowhunter books. And then, oh yeah, Belial visits Bridgestock. Bridgestock can see the 2 wounds that Cordelia gave him. Again, he only needs 1 more, and then he'll be, like, defeated, basically. And then it says, the last thing he said before he vanished, I jotted it down. This is Will saying. And Belial says, if you have any thought of sending your paladin after me, you'll be great doom upon the world. Oh, and then Will, like, Will and Tessa tell them about Jesse, and then there's all that stuff about, like, them learning that it's Jeremy, and then there's this whole, like, interaction between Jeremy and Lucie. I keep saying Jeremy, it's, like, actually Jesse, like, Jesse and Lucie talking. It says, you know, James and Cordelia kind of catch up. The whole Daisy thing, she's like, don't call me that. They kind of had this, like, whole thing where he's like, let me walk you back to your house, but Alistair is actually the one to pick her up, and he was like, let's go back to Curzon Street, but she's like, no, I'm gonna go back to Kensington with my mother and Alistair, because obviously her mother is, like, very, very pregnant. James is like, do you want to ride back to your flat to Matthew, or you could come back to the house and see the parents? I'm sure they'd love to hear about us. And then he's like, I can never hate you, Matthew. I can never hate you. He says this to himself, like, I can never hate you, for all that I hate is reversed for myself. I have nothing left over for anyone else. I know that was, like, the longest update ever, but again, I was not expecting so much to happen in the first, like, 200 pages of this book, because usually Cassie Clare books take a really, really long time to get into things, and yeah, mostly it is just, like, character drama, but obviously we have that whole thing with Jesse and, you know, Tatiana, and learning more about the Iron Tombs and kind of just getting some more information, which is really interesting. If you can hear, I am sick yet again. I think it's mostly just because, like, the change in weather since it's spring, but I don't want this clip to last any longer because I feel like this video will be 5.5 hours long if I keep talking. It's only like 9:30 right now, so I think I'm going to go and eat something, get some food. I'm cast sitting for a family friend over break, so I have to go feed their cats and their parrot, which is always interesting, and I'm gonna do that, and then try to read a big chunk of Chain of Thorns because I'm really, really excited. I am going to go, and I will let you know once I have read a little bit more, and if I feel like there is some big revelations coming, I will definitely turn on the camera to get my, you know, in the moment responses. Hello, so I am currently resting my camera on a gigantic pile of books, so hopefully it does not fall down, but I also promise that I'm not going to film every single clip of this vlog in this room. It's just the room that I've been in for most of the day, so it's, like, easy to whip out my camera when I have a reading update. So it is about, like, 2:40, and I read another 100 pages of Chain of Thorns, so I'm now about 300 pages into the book. I'm about to start chapter 17, and I thought that I would just recap a little bit of what's happened. I'm still not even halfway through the book, which is just like crazy because this book is just so long. And we've definitely had like some developments, but nothing like too crazy, like not a ton of plot twists or anything. So in chapter 10, we had Alistair and Cordelia kind of just talking to one another. They go back to their house and Cordelia talks to her mom, and there was actually a really great quote that her mother Sona says to her. She says, "You cannot fix someone, Cordelia. In the end, if they can be fixed at all, they must do the repairs themselves." And I thought that was really interesting because obviously Sona has like experience trying to fix someone, you know, that someone being her husband Elias, and obviously it's like it's even more meaningful because Cordelia, you know, is still reeling from the fact that Matthew promised her that he wouldn't drink while they were in Paris, and that he kept his secret when he started to. And obviously this is very similar to Sona's situation because Elias was an alcoholic, and Sona actually proposed Cordelia, Alistair, and her soon-to-be-born child go to back to Tehran, where they can kind of be shadow hunters in Persia again. Obviously her mother like doesn't know about all this paladin business, so that would be like a little bit of an issue, but that's kind of something that she told Cordelia that she's thinking about. Then the next scene is from James's perspective, and he goes back to Curzon Street and kind of thinks about just like reflects on like his whole spell with Grace and how he had like, he was supposed to decorate the house with Grace in mind, but he ended up doing it more so for Cordelia. And we see Thomas and Christopher kind of split up. So Christopher goes to talk to James and Thomas goes to talk to Matthew, and just kind of we see like both scenes just to kind of get perspective on where James and Matthew are both at in regards to like Cordelia and that whole situation. Then chapter 11 is really mostly about the whole situation with Cordelia being Lilith's paladin, and they're all sort of trying to figure out how, like what they can do about that. They're trying to research like other shadow hunters that have been paladins, and kind of figure out how they can possibly defeat Lilith and how they can use different strategies to maybe defeat Belial and Lilith, or to use James's connection to Belial to help them, or Cordelia's connection to Lilith to help them. Since Lilith and Belial are enemies themselves, they're trying to figure out if they can maybe do something about that and see how they can kind of manipulate the situation a little bit. Then we have a conversation between Anna, Ariadne, and Matthew. Anna says something actually really good. She says like, "And who are you exactly to have anything to say about wisdom? Your most recent idea was to run away to Paris with James's wife." And it's just interesting how like there's still so many secrets, like even this far in the book. I just thought that was like an interesting choice on Cassandra Clare's part, and I wonder like when everything will kind of blow apart, because even for me, like having just reread the first two books, it's a little bit difficult to keep track of like all of the secrets that are being withheld and everything. Then Ariadne shows Matthew the letter from her father, and they're trying to figure out who it could be to and why her father never sent the letter and who he could possibly be trying to blackmail. I also just want to say that I love Bridget. I think she's so funny, the way she's always like saying stuff, and I want to figure out why she's so old, because she's even in the Dark Artifices series, and it's not like she's a ghost or anything, or like a warlock. Like she's just some random woman, and she's like so old. Like I don't get it. I want to know why. They're also trying to figure out like all the stuff about like people saying like, oh, they'll rise, or like they're waking, because Belial said that to Inquisitor Bridgestock, and I forget who said it to Cordelia. It was like I think it might have been the Naga demons that they ran into in Paris, but they're trying to figure out what's going on with that. There's all this stuff with like James and Cordelia. They're trying to figure out their feelings. Definitely a lot of romantic tension thus far in the book. I will say something that's like kind of annoying is that I do read like pretty fast, but in scenes where like Jesse and James are to get like, you know, in one scene, it's really difficult because I like keep mixing up their names because they both start with J's and they're the exact same length. Like at least with Anna and Ariadne, their names are different lengths, so it's a little bit easier to like quickly read and not switch the two up, but with James and Jesse it's like really difficult because if you're like reading a little bit faster, you can like mix them up. I don't know. That just might be a me thing. I'm not sure. Oh, and then, oh my god, I just dropped my phone. There was this whole scene where they get a call and Bridget brings over the telephone and Will answers it and it is Albert Pangborn, and I have not heard the name Pangborn since like the Mortal Instruments series. And he is saying that they found Tatiana in the moors and that she was like by herself. So clearly Belial had abandoned her and they're trying to figure out what's going on with that. Then we switch to Cordelia in chapter 13 where she's trying to, again, just research more about paladins, and then Lucie comes in the window that of the room that Cordelia is in, and they talk a little bit, and Cordelia is like, why do you keep all these secrets about me, about Jesse and Grace? And Lucie's like, well, you kept secrets from me, and they kind of have a little bit of a fight, and Cordelia lashes out and says, where is it? I'm trying to find it. She says, well, one thing she says, do you know what it's like to be in a marriage that's a lie, where you're the only person who feels anything? James never felt a thing for me. He never looked at me the way Matthew has. He was too busy looking at Grace, your new best friend. And then she says something very mean. Oh, she says, oh, Lucie, it's like you don't live in the real world. You live in a world of stories. The beautiful Cordelia who can do anything she likes, but in the real world, we don't get everything we want. Maybe we shouldn't. So she's kind of telling Lucie that they might not be able to be parabatai in the end, considering, obviously, Cordelia's paladin status with Lilith, and that really sets Lucie off, so she goes running back home and has a whole conversation with Jessamine, actually, which is always interesting. I do like Jessamine as a character. I think she's interesting. I do feel like I still have a little bit of a problem with Lucie, just because I feel like she feels very young to me, and I feel like a lot of people have said this as well. She just feels very juvenile compared to like Cordelia and James and Matthew, and I know she is, I think, a little bit younger than them, but she's still like 16, 17, and she just feels very childish, which I think this is maybe Cassandra Clare acknowledging that, like, because even Cordelia is realizing that, like, Lucie's always stuck in her world of stories, and then there's all this stuff about how she tells Jesse that she had a fight with Cordelia, and how, like, he has to be a little bit more careful now that he's, like, a corporeal being, and try not to, like, bring shame upon her, and, like, talk to her at night in the bedrooms and all of that stuff. So they're kind of grappling with that new reality now that Jesse is, like, a real person. Then they do make out. That's a whole other thing. And then in chapter 14, we find out that Grace is, like, reading the notes that Christopher gave her in between her interrogation scenes. She kind of talks to brother Zachariah a little bit, and then Jesse comes in and they talk a little bit. I originally thought, because it was something very weird, where Jesse says, like, Grace, it's me, it worked, and they meant, like, it's very, there's, like, an emphasis on the voyance rune that he has, which was obviously taken from one of the Shadowhunters that was killed when Belial possessed Jesse's body, and I just felt like that was a little bit weird, especially considering the thing in the epilogue of Chain of Iron, where Belial says, like, oh, to Tatiana, oh, your son performed his task very well. I'm sorry the lighting is, like, so messed up in this room right now. And that just felt a little bit weird. Like, was Jesse aware of certain things? I know he says to James that, like, he feels like he could have prevented all the stuff that happened with Belial and all the murders. What is happening with the focus right now? Okay, sorry about that. I had to, like, turn off my camera and everything because the lens was, like, all messed up. Anyway, oh, then it was really sweet. Anna, like, creates a plan to get Winston back, and then in a later chapter, Winston is Ariadne's parrot, and then in a later chapter, they kind of sneak back into the Bridgestock household and get Ariadne's pet back, which is really weird because I'm actually, as I said earlier, I'm, like, pet sitting for a family friend. They have a parrot. Maybe I'll take a picture, we'll see. And I don't know, that was just, like, art imitating life. I don't know. Oh, there's a whole thing where Grace tells Jesse everything that she did, including, like, manipulating James, and he feels really sick about it and he leaves. And then there's a whole conversation with Alistair and Thomas is like, you need to stop using your friends, or, like, my friends, as an excuse for not wanting to be with me. Like, you're Cordelia's brother, she's married to James, like, you know, all this stuff. Like, he's so connected to all of the other ones, and Thomas is like, it feels like you're trying to just use their dislike over you as like a way of not being with me, which was really interesting. And then they go to Limehouse to get something. And then in chapter 15, Cordelia, Anna, Ariadne, Lucie, Jessie, and James all go to Chiswick House and kind of search around. There's like a demon that pops out. They go see Jessie's tomb. Oh, and then there's the mirror that's made of adamant that I believe Grace in Chain of Iron was using to talk to Tatiana. Oh, and then James goes to Cordelia, Anna, and Ariadne because when Cordelia like goes to the ballroom that Anna and Ariadne are in, a giant demon pops out, and it ends up like the demons in Chain of Iron. It says, "Oh, forgive me, thine is the power, thine and thy ladies, forgive me, I did not know." So it like goes away because it can recognize that Cordelia is Lilith's paladin. Then in chapter 16, Cordelia goes to the Hellruel to visit Hypatia Vex and trying to get some information about paladins and see if she knows anything about Lilith. And then she runs into Magnus and Matthew and talks to Matthew about like his drinking and everything. And she basically tries to convince him, or tries to encourage him to talk to James about what he did, about how he went to the Shadow Market and got that potion to give to his mother to see if she was telling the truth. But she ended up losing her baby because of it, because it was actually poison. And he's really reluctant to, of course, because Charlotte, his mother, is James's godmother, and he thinks that James will never be able to forgive him. Jessie tells Lucie that he is now like kind of disgusted by Grace because of what she told him about how she was controlling James. There's a whole message from Cordelia that comes in, and then we have the scene where like Ariadne and Anna go to Ariadne's house to steal the bird, and that is how the chapter leaves off. So we don't know what the message from Cordelia is yet. We kind of leave off with Ariadne and Anna. And then chapter 17. I do want to say I love the chapter titles in this series and the different epigraphs, that's what they're called. It's like, I really like, because in the Mortal Instruments and even the Infernal Devices, the chapter titles were not as like metaphorical, but definitely in the Dark Artifices and the Last Hours especially, I like all of the different poems that she uses to like talk about the different chapter, or to get the different chapter titles. I just feel like it's so interesting how Cassandra Clare can find an epigraph that like has such a perfect chapter title in it. It like relates to what goes on in the different scenes of the chapter, and it's also like a really cool metaphorical name for the chapter. So I just feel like that's really interesting, and I'm definitely enjoying the book. I feel like something is about to go down. Like, I just feel like whatever message Cordelia has sent is going to be like really monumental, and I don't know. I'm really interested to see how the story progresses. I'm going to move this because I feel like I keep coming in and out of focus, but I feel like something crazy is about to happen, and I feel like once I reach the halfway point of the book, something is gonna, you know, rock the book and just change everything about what we know. And I'm really excited to see like how all the as I said, like how all the different secrets being revealed will play out, and how all the characters will progress. I don't know, I've seen some like mixed reviews of Chain of Thorns, which is a little weird. Like, I've seen people that love the first two books that gave them 5 out of 5 stars, that like fell in love with the series, give Chain of Thorns like 4 and 3 stars, which aren't bad ratings, but you'd expect that like this would be as good as the first two. I don't know why, but I just feel like you would expect that, especially with Cassandra Clare, because her finales are usually like really, really great. I just touched my viewfinder and something happened. I hope I didn't like mess up my entire camera. I don't know, but yeah, I'm interested to see like how the rest of the book plays out. I have zero theories as to what's going to happen with Tatiana or Grace or any of the characters, but I definitely like the different POVs, and I don't know, I don't see like a big problem with the book so far, so I feel like I'm going to be intrigued to see if I feel the same way as other people have, like mixed feelings wise. I don't know, but yeah, I am going to go read probably a little bit more. And again, I really want to catch like a candid reaction, but we will see if that happens. Okay, so I decided to read like a couple of chapters while my January wrap-up is like uploading onto YouTube. And literally, I'm still on chapter 17, and so much has happened in this singular chapter, like so many reveals. I just finished the chapter, but literally so much has happened and I need to discuss it. So our first scene, we have James and like all of them going to Matthew's flat, and we have this sweet moment where Christopher, why do I always like mix up Christopher and Thomas? Yes, Christopher basically tells Matthew that the reason he's getting so sick when he tries to quit drinking alcohol is because of like withdrawal symptoms, basically. So he explains that it's like can cause like shocks to your system. You can even have a heart attack and like or a stroke and die. And they all decide to stay with Matthew overnight, and there's this really cute like full page illustration. I don't know if you can see it, but there's this full page illustration with like the four of them and Oscar the dog, which was really cute. And then we have this scene, well, also in the scene, we find out that Alistair is like seriously planning on going to Tehran with Sona after she gives birth, because he says that Cordelia needs to stay in London. And Thomas is like, no, you can't, you're just saying this because like they don't like you, and they have like a little bit of a tiff, I guess. But then Cordelia is like saying how much, or is thinking about how much she misses Curzon Street, and she's really taking what Hypatia Vex told her to heart, thinking about like, because Hypatia said, simply find a place of death or horror scarred by tragedy, in order to, so she's going to try to like play into her paladin stuff to try to defeat Belial and all that. And that's the whole thing. And then we get a scene with Cordelia and Alistair where they're talking about like their mother and all of that, and Cordelia says, I'm not sure we choose who to love. I rather think love is something like a book written just for us, a sort of holy text it is given to us to interpret, and you are refusing to read yours. And that was a quote that Cassandra Clare posted on her Instagram that I originally thought was like aimed at either Cordelia, James, or Matthew. But it's really interesting that Cordelia is actually the one saying it to Alistair, especially since we had that whole scene with Alistair and Thomas. It was also really sweet that like James and Matthew are not fighting anymore, or are not like fighting because like over Cordelia. Like they're still parivati, they're still like brotherly, and I really loved that. I thought that was really sweet. And then we get this random perspective from a woman named Letty Nance. I mean, she's not a woman, she's like, well, I don't know, she could be a teenager, I don't know. But basically, she works at the Cornwall Institute, and she was talking about Albert Pangborn, and she's like, he's an ancient crow, basically. And it says, but 2 nights ago, they brought in an old woman, or at least she seemed old, blah, 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 and we find out that it is none other than Tatiana. I originally thought it was Bridget for some reason, but no, it's Tatiana. And Tatiana says, he promised me everything, power and revenge. Now I have nothing. Now I must fear him. What if he comes after me? And then she says, I would see my children. Why can I not see my children? And then she says, yeah, Letty offers to bring a silent brother. And Tatiana says, yes, a silent brother. I would very much like to see him when he comes. So clearly there's some beef between Tatiana and Belial that is going to kind of be uncovered. And then Cordelia goes to Curzon Street to kind of deal with some stuff, and then she does summon a bunch of random demons, and she's like, you should fear me because I'm Lilith's paladin, and they're like, no girl. And basically James comes and, oh wait, actually before James comes and shoots them with his gun that's like inscribed with the verse from Luke, basically she finds out that they wake, like that thing that everyone's been saying, are like what they assumed, basically like an army of demons that Belial is creating in Edom. And then James comes and shoots all of them, and the last line is, his face was white, his jaw was set in an expression Cordelia recognized as a rare emotion for James, absolute incandescent rage. So I don't know what's going to go down, but I'm really scared, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep up with like updating on every single thing that happens, or else this video is literally going to be 7,000 hours long, because literally I'm not even halfway through the book, and so much has happened already, and more is bound to go down. Hello. So, yes, you can tell that my bed is not made in the background. I promise I do make my bed almost every single day, but I just was not in the mood today. I actually had to take a little bit of a break after reading that section, or after finishing a section of the book. I only read like 2 more chapters after where I updated you after chapter 17, so I'm now on chapter 20 of Chain of Thorns, so I don't even know what page I'm on. I'm on page 378, and oh my god, there's so much that happened in this book, like in chapters 18 and 19. In chapter 18, first I want to start with Letty Nance, or whatever this girl's name is. Basically, we find out that one of these silent brothers ends up coming to the Cornwall Institute where Letty works and goes to talk to Tatiana about something, and Letty overhears them. And it sounds very, like, demonic, like she hears grunting and all of this stuff, like rustling, just things that are not good. And then a couple of scenes later, she goes inside and talks to Tatiana, and Tatiana becomes this, like, giant demon thing and lunges for Letty, and that's the last thing that we heard about that. But we also had, like, this whole confrontation between Cordelia and James, where James is like, you cannot give it to Lilith, it doesn't matter, like, you're gonna end up hurting yourself. All of this stuff. He's about to reveal his secret, and then he doesn't. And it's, like, so infuriating. Like, how long is this gonna be kept a secret about the whole bracelet? Then there's this whole thing where Jessie comes in and talks about the mirror that Grace used to, like, contact and speak to Tatiana, and James is like, oh yeah, let me use that mirror, because it's, like, made of adamant and everything. And he's like, oh yeah, I'll use that mirror, it's all gonna be fine. And then he goes and, like, sees what Belial is doing in Edom, I'm assuming, and like they predicted, he's, like, creating this army of demon things that are, like, really disgusting and gross. They're, like, all chimera. And, James, like, is sent back to our world and all of this. And James says, I think he is sending them to possess someone. It felt like a great many someones, but who could they be? So we still have this looming question about what these creatures are and all of that. Then we have that scene with Letty, and literally, like, it's horrifying. She says, like, this is in her head, I must run, I must get out of this place. But she couldn't move, not even when the old woman's skin split, her body shifting and changing so rapidly it was as if she were melting and reforming into something else. Something pale and tall, skinny-limbed, bald and hairless, with skin like a puckered burn. Something that hunched its back and hopped and crawled. Something slimy and pale white that came at Letty so fast that she had no time even to cry out. Then, chapter 19 is the Christmas party that we've all been waiting for. Not a ton actually happens in this chapter. It's mostly just things about, like, we kind of just jump from character to character. But we obviously have Grace, like, talking to Christopher. They share a sweet moment. There is an illustration, which is really cool. And they kind of talk about Brother Zachariah and everything. We have Lucie, who goes to talk to Malcolm and says and promises him that she will let him contact Annabelle and all of this stuff, and she offers to bring him to the party, but he's like, no, because it brings up too many bad memories of his time with Annabelle. They introduce Jessie as Jeremy Blackthorn, and they have, like, an interaction. There's this whole thing with, like, Rosamund Wentworth, which is so random. I remember in Chain of Iron there was a whole chapter dedicated to, like, her engagement party to some random guy, and now she's, like, considering leaving him or whatever. There's another confrontation between Thomas and Alistair where Thomas is like, you're using your whole thing about, like, the group not liking you as an excuse. And then they start, like, making out. Thomas kind of talks to Sona. Wait, no. They do not start making out. I literally just made that up. Basically, Thomas ends up talking to Sona a little bit, which was, like, a sweet moment. There's this whole thing, the whole thing in the sanctuary with Malcolm and Lucie. There's a scene, the scene that closes the chapter is, like, with Anna and Ariadne. James kind of convinces tries to encourage Matthew that, like, his wit and charm did not come, like, from drinking so much. He was like that before he started drinking, and again, it was like Matthew was about to tell him, but then these randos, like, came over and started talking to them, so it was, like, very annoying. Oh, and then there's this really sweet moment where, like, James goes over to Cordelia and tells her to look inside the globe necklace that he gave her in Chain of Iron, and there is, like, a sonnet, I guess, from Lord Byron that says, there yet are two things in my destiny, a world to roam through and a home with thee. The first were nothing, had I still the last, it were the haven of my happiness. And again, he's, like, about to tell her about Grace, and he just doesn't, and it's really annoying. And then, there's just that whole thing with Anna and Ariadne, and it was just, like, so much was packed into those two chapters. I'm still not even halfway through the book. Like, I don't know, like, what's gonna happen. Like, literally, it is 5:54 now. It's almost 6 o'clock. I have to go back to our family friend's house to, like, feed the cats again and take care of the bird and all that and take care of the house a little bit. And then we have to eat dinner, and I don't know how much more I'm going to be able to read because I am scared I'm going to have, like, a mental breakdown because there's so much going on in this book. And I'm, like, scared for what's to come. Like, I have no idea what's going to happen. And, like, I've been avoiding things about this book like the plague. I don't want to know anything. I don't want to know anything about any plot twists, about anything. I don't even want to know if there are plot twists, if the ending is happy or sad. Like, I don't want to know anything. So I'm really going into the rest of this book blind, and I'm terrified. But I'm going to take a break. I'm going to let myself process everything that happened. My video went out, my January wrap-up, so I'm happy about that. And yeah, I'm going to definitely try to get to page at least 400 by the end of the day. I'm going to try to get to page 450. We'll see. And then I'll have, like, almost like over 300 pages left for tomorrow, which I feel like is going to be good. I don't really know what else to say. I guess I will see you later, and hopefully not too many, well, I don't know, like, it's a double-edged sword. I want crazy things to happen because that would be, like, a great thing in the book, but I also don't want to be unstable. We'll see. I don't know. I guess I'll just leave it to Cassie Clare. She can do whatever she wants, I guess. I feel like my appearance right now is indicative and symbolic of how I'm feeling on the inside. Good morning, first of all. It is obviously the next day. It is Sunday. It's about 9:20. My family and I are going to Connecticut, just like nearby town, for a day trip because it's Sunday, and we just wanted to do that. And I do have to do this reading update a little bit quicker than I would normally because I do have to go over to our family friend's house to feed and take care of the animals before we go to Connecticut. But I have many a reading update. First of all, I need to address some of the things that I forgot to talk about last night. One of them being the fact that Lucie and Jessie cannot touch one another because of the whole connection to Belial. I forgot to mention that, which was, like, revealed during the conversation that Lucie and Malcolm had during the Christmas party. So that's one thing that I forgot to mention, and then I forgot what else I was gonna say. I don't know, maybe it'll come to me as I am recapping, but I read a couple of chapters while I was drinking my coffee and stuff, because I do have the ebook as well, so I was just kind of reading while I was sitting there. So I read, I don't even know how many chapters, I don't know what page I'm on in the book, but I read chapters 20, 21, and 22. So I read 3 chapters. And I'm just going to start recapping. So basically, we have a scene, like where I started reading, is still during the Christmas party, and Cordelia is trying to find Matthew. And she basically talks to him a little bit more about his alcohol addiction, and kind of is just encouraging him, like, that he is someone, there's, like, a person behind the bottle, basically, which I thought was really sweet. And she does tell him that she loves James, and that she could never love him the way that she does James, and that she doesn't love Matthew to the extent that he deserves. So that was definitely quite the heartbreaking moment. Then we have quite a cute scene between Thomas and Alistair where they are talking, and Alistair finally decides to, like, you know, show his feelings with Thomas. But just as they are about to kiss, a scream erupts, and it is Cecily, and we kind of go to every character before they hear the scream. So we have James kind of eavesdropping on Cordelia and Matthew. We have Lucie and Jessie talking about their whole situation where they can't, like, touch one another. And we do have another illustration. I don't know if you can see it. Oh wait, I just realized that I can enlarge it. Okay. Then we have, what was the other scene? Oh, well, it was, yeah, Cordelia after she talks to Matthew. We see, like, her perspective, and then we see the scream, and none other than Tatiana shows up and steals Alexander Lightwood, which is why Cecily was screaming, because that's obviously her young child. He's only 3 years old, and Tatiana steals him. And then freaking Piers Wentworth, like, so random. I remember he was attacked in Chain of Gold, and I didn't care about him at all. And he was, like, one of the people that got, like, attacked by the Manticore demon. He's so irrelevant, I'm sorry. And he literally tries to run up to her, and as he does, she flees and disappears. But, like, during this, Tatiana's like, oh, you guys never helped me. like, Jane, like, they talk about the notes that they found at her house when they went to see it a couple of chapters earlier. There's all this stuff about how she's, like, blaming them and stuff. And then she reveals that Tessa is Belial's daughter, which is, like, you know, obviously, everyone knows that Tessa is a warlock, which means that she had to be the daughter of a demon, but they don't know that it was, like, Belial, one of the princes of hell. Then they kind of all make a plan to go to the Lightwood house because they kind of, like, Jesse's like, I know my mother, she would want poetic justice, she's gonna go to the house that Alexander was born in order to kill him, so they all kind of go out to find him. They're attacked by some random demons that they end up fighting. Cordelia does not pick up a weapon, so she does not end up summoning Lilith, but she does see that Tatiana is in the Lightwood house and is about to put a rune on Alexander's chest, which obviously he's way too young to have a rune. It could kill him, which is the same way that Jesse was killed, and so she's, again, the whole poetic justice thing. But they go and attack Tatiana. Anna gets her brother back, Alexander, obviously, and they end up apprehending Tatiana. And also, oh, here was the thing that I forgot to mention. The Tatiana that was found in the moors and that was brought to the Oslo Institute and that killed Albert Pangborn and Letty was not actually Tatiana. It was an Eidolon demon in disguise. Then we have Grace, who is talking to Christopher, and she's kind of thinking about how she's finally made a friend. We go back to Cordelia, where they're all kind of talking about how easy it was to get Tatiana and how they think that it's part of some greater plan because she never would have, like, resisted, or would never have relinquished that easily. Or what is the word, like, acquiesced? The word is not coming out of my head, but you know what I mean. Then they realize that Tessa is going to be questioned by the Inquisitor because, you know, now everyone knows that she's the daughter of Belial, and so they all go to the Institute, and she gets questioned. And I love, there was a line where Alistair says, there is the blood of Rostam in your veins, which is, like, obviously from the Shahnameh, and I just love those little references. Yeah, there's all this stuff about where they talk about, like, Cornwall and how, you know, it wasn't actually Tatiana, and then the whole thing with Tessa, and then, yeah, with Tessa, and then Charles, oh, I hate this kid. He literally, like, basically agrees with Inquisitor Bridgestock and everything and says, like, oh yeah, we can't trust you, Tessa, the Harrenhals lied to us, all this stuff. Ariadne confronts her father about the letter that he sent, and Grace ends up finding out that Brother Zechariah has brought Tatiana to the Silent City as well, and how she's going to be moved to the prisons in Idris in like the next day, I think. And then Alistair and Thomas go to Matthew and tell him that he needs to take all of the alcohol out of his apartment because if he doesn't, he'll always be tempted. And Alistair kind of tells Thomas that, like, his father would sometimes quit for days, weeks, months, but then one thing would happen and he would pick up the alcohol again. Oh, and then James receives a message from Cordelia that tells him that he needs to meet her at Curzon Street. And then Lucie goes to meet Jesse and they begin, like, making out or whatever. And then she ends up, like, falling into some sort of realm where she sees, like, high walls, towers that pierce the sky, shimmering like crystal, the demon towers of Alicante, where she's seeing Idris. Gates wrought from silver and iron rose up. They were covered with a strange calligraphy, like marks rendered in an alien script. And then she says, yes, I did, but I don't know, Jesse. I don't know what any of it means. So that's kind of where I left off. And also I saw that the next chapter starts with Cordelia ran, which was, I remember, the first line of the final chapter in Chain of Iron. So I don't know if that was, like, purposeful. There's also a chapter 20 is called Iron Heart, and there's a chapter in Chain of Iron where that is called Heart of Iron. So I might want to go back and reread Heart of Iron, that chapter, or just, like, skip through it to see if there's, like, any connection between, like, what happens, or if it was just, like, a coincidence. I don't know. But that whole, like, so much is happening, and I feel like I can't just update every 100 pages because I feel like there's so much going on in every single chapter. There was, I remember, I cannot find it, but there was, like, oh, okay, there was also a line that I forgot to mention where Alistair is talking to Thomas at the party, and he says, Raziel knows, perhaps that is the reason I've not become like Tatiana myself. You keep me human, Tom, which I thought that was so cute, and Alistair is, like, finally breaking down, or, like, his walls are coming down, which I really like. But I have to go. But I do want to say that I'm really loving the book so far. I still don't see why people, like, haven't enjoyed it, or haven't enjoyed it as much as the other two, because I feel like so much is going down, and I'm so excited to keep reading in the car on the way to Connecticut and on the way back and stuff. I probably won't update a ton. Maybe I'll update on my phone while we're there, like, just to give a little reading update if something crazy happens. But yeah, I will probably be back later this afternoon, and I'm super excited to continue reading, but oh my god, I'm terrified for what's to come. Hello. So there is much to update on. I'm sitting down because I know I cannot do this clip standing up because I need to have the book with me so that I can, like, reference and go through every scene and talk about what has happened. This bookmark is also a lie because it says I'm on page 378 and on chapter 20, which we know is not true. I actually got very, very far into this book while we were, like, driving and stuff. I'm now on chapter 30 and on page 621. And there is, like, so much to update on that I know I'm not going to be able to cover everything because there's just way too much. So basically in chapter 23 we get this whole scene between, or this whole sequence between James and Cordelia where we find out that Cordelia has gone to see Grace, and that Grace reveals that she had been kind of torturing James and manipulating him, which I thought was so good and so satisfying because I feel like it gave the whole situation a whole new light, because I feel like if James had told Cordelia, it would have been satisfying, but I feel like Grace admitting that what she did was wrong and, like, confessing to Cordelia was, like, a great way to do that. And so James and Cordelia have their moment, and it's really, really cute and steamy. And chapter 24, we have a ton of stuff happening. Like, I don't even know where to start. A lot of it is just them talking about the whole Grace situation and the whole, like, all of the stuff with the bracelet. And then they confront Charles about the whole situation with the Inquisitor, and Matthew and Thomas and Alistair figure out that it's because Inquisitor Bridgestock sent that letter to Charles blackmailing him and saying that if he doesn't support Bridgestock, that he will, like, reveal that Charles is gay. And so that was, like, a whole thing that they figured out. Wait, actually, hold on, I need to talk about this first. They basically figure out that Tatiana, like, wanted to be arrested because when she was in the Ottoman Citadel, she got the key to the Iron Tombs. Then she gave it to Belial so that he could, like, go in. And then Jesse says, my mother must have stolen it. She would have unlocked the tombs for Belial, let him in. He would have brought the chimeras there, possessed the bodies of the Iron Sisters and Silent Brothers who were lying there undefended, and once that was done, marched them to the Silent City to attack. And they find out that they wake, they rise, they march. All those messages, they were telling us what step Belial was in his clan, but we didn't realize. So it's actually really interesting that it's the Iron Sisters and the Silent Brothers that are taking over, and one of the Silent Brothers actually is, like, in league with Tatiana and takes Grace's power of compelling men from her and basically raids the Silent City. Yeah. Then none other than Tatiana shows up, and we go into chapter 25 where there's an entire fight. It's, like, insane. There's, like, a whole conversation between Alistair and Thomas where they, like, make out a little bit, but then they realize that they have to go back. And then they all start to fight Tatiana, and there's an entire, like, battle, basically. I'm trying to find, like, the scenes so that I make sure I'm describing it all correctly. Lucie ends up bringing Rupert Blackthorn, like, out into the world so he can confront Tatiana and tell her that what she's doing is absolutely wrong. And then something happens where, like, Grace and Tatiana both, like, lunge for... it says, without a word, she turned and tore after Grace and Tatiana, hurtling through the gates in pursuit. That's Cordelia. And then, I love how in chapter 26 there's, like, multiple sections where it's, like, Cordelia ran. I just love that that's a recurring thing because it's, like, showing her stages of development and stuff. Like, in the end of Chain of Iron, there's one. There was another chapter that began with it. Chapter 26 begins with it. And, like, multiple sections in chapter 28 begin with it. And Basically, Cordelia ends up summoning Lilith so that she can kill Tatiana, but then she does end up killing Tatiana, and she feels very remorseful over it. And then we find out that Christopher is dead. I feel like if anyone was going to die in this book, I thought it would be Matthew, and he honestly could die. There's still, like, over 100 pages left for me, like 150 basically. More than that, actually. And he could possibly still die, but I did not expect Christopher to die. I was really upset about it because I feel like he was the one person that could, like, help Grace, like, get into the group more, but I feel like now that she, is kind of, like, was with Cordelia when all this happened, I don't know, I just feel like Grace is maybe having a redemption arc, which I can really enjoy and appreciate. And then, obviously, we have to have a scene where Belial comes and, like, sweeps James and Matthew away. We had the grief intermission chapter where it's from Cordelia's perspective, and I really enjoyed that. I thought that was a great, like, addition to the story. There's a whole procession where they're joined. Okay, so my camera literally died while I was filming that, but I need to finish this whole reading update because there's just way too much to talk about. Also, I know for a fact that I'm not going to be looking into the camera this entire time because I don't know, I just feel like it's awkward. Anyway, so yeah, basically Belial takes James and Matthew, and then there's this whole procession in chapter 27 where they're going to bring Christopher, and then a portal opens to take them all to Idris, but the whole gang stays behind and kind of boards up the Institute so that all of the Watchers, which is what, like, the new army is called, cannot get in. Oh, okay, so basically Lucie confesses to Cordelia that every time she kisses Jesse, she basically falls into, like, Edom, essentially, and, then they basically kind of have an idea, which, obviously I'm gonna say, it's, like, to go to Edom and basically, like, use Lilith's power to take down Belial. And then, we cut to James and Matthew in Edom. Not a ton happens, but basically they talk about, like, how they have to have faith and everything. And then Thomas takes Jesse and Grace to do something. I honestly can't even remember. This feels like so much happened that I feel like some of these scenes I don't even recall. Oh, okay, right. They go to the lab so that Grace can kind of pick up where Christopher left off. There's this whole thing where Lucie returns to the Institute. Oh yeah, she puts, like, a letter in Jesse's room, and then Cordelia goes to talk to Alistair and talks about how she is going to go do something with Lucie and that he cannot come because he needs to take care of their mother and their future sibling. And she asks for Cortana back because obviously she's gonna, like, summon Lilith again. Oh yeah, we cut back to James and Matthew, and Belial basically offers them a deal where he's like, it's you two or the rest of the world, like, which one are you gonna save? They choose to save the rest of the world, obviously. And then Lucie and Cordelia end up going to this random cemetery where they are going to, you know, summon Lilith, which I'm gonna get into. And then we have the scene with Ariadne and Anna, where Ariadne kind of comforts Anna. Yes, they go to the Crossbones graveyard and summon Lilith. They talk about, like, Watchers and stuff. And, yeah, so basically Lilith's like, do you really think I would be so foolish as to allow myself to be bound? Cordelia says, I want to save James and Matthew. I'm prepared to kill Belial. I have the will and the weapon. Send us to Edom. Myself and Lucie send us to Edom, and I will reclaim it for you by dispatching Belial before he takes London, before he takes James, before he is unstoppable. Okay, and then Cordelia and Lilith make a deal that that's what they're gonna do. And then, it says, she saw the glow of 3 strange moons in the sky as a searing dry wind lifted her, twisting her body until it seemed as if her spine would snap. She cried out for Lucie, and then she was falling through a hot, choking darkness, the salt taste of blood in her mouth. We have Jesse finding out that that's where they went. He talks to Grace, and he's like, why couldn't I go? And she was like, because they know you can't handle it, because Cordelia has a connection to Lilith, and Lucie has the connection to Belial. And then we go back to James and Matthew, and we see the, like, full-page illustration. I cannot pick up this book. It's way too heavy. And I originally was flipping through the book and I thought it was because Matthew was dead, but no, he's not dead. So thank God about that. Oh, so basically, James is like, I cannot demand that you tell me anything. I've kept enough from you. Only if you want to tell me, I swear I will listen. And then Matthew's like, all right, I'll tell you what happened. We don't get to see that yet, but that's what happens. And then Alistair and Thomas are going to like fight some of the Watchers, and they do end up fighting one. Oh yeah, so basically we end the chapter. It says they push the Chimera demon's body free. It crawls out of the Silent Brothers' limp body, its abdomen pulsing, its green eyes glowing. As they fixed on Thomas, it leaped toward him as a merciful darkness came down like a curtain. And that's the last thing that I read. I'm on chapter 30. I have 35 chapters. No, not 35 chapters left. I have 5 chapters left, plus the Coda and the Epilogue, which I'm terrified for. I have like a little over 150 pages left, and I'm really enjoying the book so far. I feel like it's taking a lot of turns that I did not expect. The whole thing where it's like they want to, like, Tatiana and Belial want to create like a new London is interesting. I feel like I don't want to like judge the book too much until I finish it, because I feel like everything's gonna wrap up, because I feel like right now I could talk about how I feel like there are loose ends and how I feel like everything's not coming together and how I feel like things could be a little bit better, but I feel like that could all change by the end of the book, so I don't want to like, you know, be premature in my judgments. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like I want to hold off until I finish the book. Hopefully I can finish it today, because I'm like so eager to figure out what happens. And I'm also very scared to figure out what happens. I'm sorry I've been looking this way for this entire clip, but like, I know I'm supposed to look there, but it just like feels weird when I can like stare at myself instead, you know? Because usually when I'm like looking at the camera and I stare at the viewfinder, you can't really tell, because it's like the lens and the viewfinder are close enough to each other. I don't really know. Wait, maybe if I flip this over? No, that didn't do anything. Okay, anyway, I have to go to dinner right now. I'm charging my camera, so you won't have to deal with this horrible vlogging for very much longer. And yeah, I'm gonna have to go to the family friend's house to take care of their pets again. And then I'm gonna finish Chain of Thorns, hopefully. I might have to wait until tomorrow morning to finish it. But I'm gonna do my best to finish it tonight. I'm definitely gonna sneak like a chapter or two during dinner on my phone. But yeah, we'll see you later. And hopefully I'm not seeing you later upset because one of my favorite characters has died. We shall see, though. I don't trust Cassandra Clare. Good morning. I look and sound phenomenal. I know, you don't have to tell me. I am so congested right now. I don't know why. I got really sick last night and just did not feel like reading. Like, I felt very nauseous. Not to get too TMI. But, yeah, and I woke up, like, an hour ago. It's like almost 9 o'clock. I woke up actually more than an hour ago, but whatever. And I thought that I would update you on what I read. I only read like 3 chapters since that last time that I updated you, but I really wanted to finish the book now before I go over to our family friend's house and before my family and I take like another day trip. I really want to finish Chain of Thorns just because I need to know what happens, and I only have 2 more chapters left, and then the Coda and the Epilogue, and I really want to film my reaction reading the Epilogue, and just see if anything comes about. But I thought I would talk about like what happened in those last chapters. So I read chapter 31 at dinner, like just kind of while we were waiting for things. Oh no, sorry, I read chapter 30 while at dinner, because I was like looking at chapter 31 and I was like, I feel like I read this morning. But yes, I read chapter 30 during dinner, and that one is mostly just about Lucie and Cordelia going to Edom and kind of just exploring it a little bit. There's a scene where Anna and Ariadne are talking with like Thomas and them. They kind of talk about how they need Jesse and Grace to make sure that those fire messages that Christopher started working on actually work. We have the aftermath of Matthew telling James like what happened with Charlotte and all of that, and then we have Lucie and Cordelia kind of like going further through Edom and like encountering this random creature that lets them through if they tell secrets, and then they each tell like each other a secret that they kept from the other. And then in chapter 31 they all make a plan, like everyone who's still on Earth in London. So Ariadne and Anna are going to go to the Silent City and kind of try to figure out what's happening with the Iron Tombs and all of that. And then we cut to James and Matthew, and James says that he's going to let Belial possess him so that he can save everyone else. And this is kind of in it for Belial because okay, sorry, I had to put in a new memory card because my other one was full. But basically, the whole thing about possessing James is advantageous or beneficial for Belial because if he does this, then Cordelia won't hurt him because if she kills Belial, then she'll be killing James as well. Oh, also James kind of like saves Matthew. He like keeps drawing Erothes on him, which like keep disappearing, but he eventually ends up helping Matthew. And then Grace and Jesse end up figuring out how to do the fire messages. And then Anna and Ariadne end up in the Silent City. Then in chapter 32 we have Lucie and Cordelia reaching Idumea, and they basically end up encountering... They go to sleep so that they avoid the dark because that's what Lilith told them. And then they kind of talk to one another about like the secrets that they kept from each other and how they're sorry. And then Lucie confesses to like writing a book about like the wicked Queen Cordelia instead of the beautiful Cordelia. We have Thomas and Alistair finally like admitting their feelings to one another. Then we have Lucie and Cordelia encountering all the people that Belial killed, and they kind of let them through so that they can enter Lilith's palace. And once they do, they see that there's a area that they can like go in, and there's like a tree and a garden and stuff, and Matthew is there alone. Obviously like James and Belial are gone. I'm kind of telling this out of order just because like the scenes are broken up a little bit differently in this book than in the other ones, but basically chapter 33, the last thing that happened, Ariadne and Anna are in the Silent City, and there's some stuff happening. Basically, Ariadne says the responsibility for Christopher's death is Belial's. They are a horror, the Watchers, because of whose bodies have been possessed, but chimeras are just demons like any other demons. They are the instruments of Belial, and it is Belial we must defeat. There's also another thing where basically, like, Thomas found out that they're, like, have some rune on the back of their neck, and if you attack that, then the demon and the Silent Brother or Iron Sister separate, and you can just kill the demon like you would any other. Okay, then we have that scene where they, like, go into the palace, Lucie and Cordelia. Okay, I'm like looking through this chapter again, and I feel like I was zoning out when I read it because there's so many like things that I'm looking at right now that I feel like are new. I don't know, like, this is so weird. Oh, okay, never mind, I do remember this. Basically, they end up, I don't know where they are, Ariadne and Anna, but they basically end up going through some door and seeing like Gideon, Sophie, Eugenia, Piers, Rosamond, and Flora, Ariadne's mother. And then, yeah, again, we go back to Cordelia and Lucie crossing the bridge, getting into the palace and everything. We have Alistair and Thomas again. And then we finish the chapter with Cordelia and with Cordelia and Lucie talking to Matthew about how, like, James is gone and everything. And then they end up going through a portal to go back to London. Okay, but right now I'm going to go downstairs and finish the book, and I'll probably update you on the last two chapters, and then we'll record my live reaction to the epilogue, because I feel like it will absolutely break me. All I can say is 5 stars. Hello. So it is much, much later. It's definitely like 6:15, 6:30. But right after I finished the epilogue of Chain of Thorns and closed that book in that last clip, I had to go, and we went like on a little bit of a day trip, and we just got back, so I'm finally going to recap the end of Chain of Thorns. I know I said that I would recap like the last 2 chapters before the Coda and the epilogue, but I did not do that. So I'm gonna do that now a little bit. I mean, there's not a ton to like recap exactly. One, because I kind of blacked out because I was so anxious the whole time, but also because most of it is just like the battle, you know, like Lucie and Cordelia come back from Edom. There's a whole thing with Lilith and Belial, and like Belial, that was so cool and cinematic when Belial like goes to the Westminster Palace to like be crowned as king, and there's the skeleton of the first like Archbishop of Canterbury, that king, or that crowned like the conqueror after the Norman conquest. Like, that was such a cool visual. And then the final like illustration in the book with James like holding the crown above his head, because obviously Belial is like, you know, has possessed James's body. And then the whole showdown with like Lilith at the end, where Cordelia's like, no, all you said was that if Belial dies by Cortana, you will release me. And then there's this whole thing where she like flies away and all this stuff. And it was just like such an epic battle. And for the first time in a really long time, Cassandra Clare has not ended like one of her books and then made it continue for like 100 pages. I would have liked maybe one more chapter before the epilogue. Like, I feel like the epilogue could have been chapter 36, and then we could have had a longer epilogue to talk about like what happens afterward. This book did not end with a wedding, which was like so upsetting, because I feel like every Cassie Clare finale ends with a wedding, so I would have loved if the epilogue had like Lucie and Jesse's wedding. I feel like that would have been really great. Or I don't even know who else could have like gotten married. I don't know, Thomas and Alistair, like they're really the only other couple at the end of this book. But I loved the epilogue where they're all like, they have, I think it's Jesse's coffin, and they're all putting things into it to like burn it and get rid of things that they don't love. Like, I loved that scene. You could probably see me like smiling at certain points throughout the epilogue. And then they do go on their honeymoon to Constantinople, which they like talked about throughout the series, James and Cordelia. And I love the whole thing where it's like, I think Lucie and Jesse will get married once Lucie publishes like her book. So I feel like that would have been so great if that chapter with them like burning everything was like chapter 36, and then we could have gotten chapter 34 and 35, all of that. We could have gotten the Coda with Jem, which was so interesting also. And then we could have gotten chapter 36, which was like the epilogue. And then the real epilogue would be, you know, Lucie getting her first book published, maybe Cordelia and James having a kid, Lucie and Jesse's wedding, like all of that. Oh my god, I loved that Charlotte is pregnant with twins now. Like, that is so cute. I love that. There's just so many aspects of the last like couple of chapters that I just like loved so much. There was, of course, like in the first line of the last chapter was Cordelia ran, and the last line of the book actually is that it says side by side with James, Cordelia ran, and that's how the book ends, and I love that so much. I also think it's so funny that Esme Hardcastle is trying to like create this family tree, which obviously like explains away the family tree that's in the back, or in like on the back of the dust jacket of Clockwork Princess. That's obviously incorrect. I thought that was like an interesting thing, just like to kind of, for Cassie Clare to like explain away why that family tree is not correct and why it's like not canon and everything, because obviously Christopher is #dead, and there's people on it that like don't exist anymore. Like, Cordelia's mother's name has changed. The like Alistair has a wife in it, and Cordelia and Alistair do not have a third sibling. That was also really great too, like seeing Zachary and all of that, and I really loved that. There were definitely like some loose threads in this book, and I feel like I want to process it tonight, and I will update this vlog in the morning and kind of give my final thoughts on the book. But before I let you guys go, I do want to say I loved the end of this book. I also loved the parabaptise ceremony that was in the short story at the end of this book. I feel like that should have been a part of the book as well. Like, I feel like we could have had that. We could have, again, had the epilogue been chapter 36, maybe included that at the end, and then had like an epilogue as I described earlier. And I feel like that would have been great. I'm still giving the book 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it like way too much, and I was enjoying myself way too much not to. But I feel like I do want to kind of mull over my full thoughts a little bit more and update you guys in the morning. But as of right now, I am really, really happy with the book, and I'm so excited to like watch some other people's reviews and all of that, so yeah, definitely excited for that, and I will see you guys in the morning to close out this vlog. Hello, so it is actually not the next morning, it is like 4 or 5 days later. I kind of just wanted to like process my thoughts on the book a little bit more. I wanted to edit my vlog fully so that I could kind of like relive all of the emotions. I read a couple of other books since then. The reason I don't have my camera on a tripod and I'm not holding the book is because if you watch my These Infinite Threads vlog, which should be going up like soon after this, I literally split my finger open, so I just don't really want to be holding things, which is why I'm holding my camera with my other hand, so I kind of have an excuse not to hold the book. Also, if you can hear what sounds like a windstorm right now, it's actually my computer, because so far this vlog is 1 hour and 19 minutes long, and this will definitely make it a little bit longer, but I basically just wanted to wrap up all of my thoughts on the book. So, I definitely loved Chain of Thorns. I'm still gonna stick with my 5 out of 5 star rating. I've watched a couple of reviews, I've kind of read a couple of things, and, you know, even after editing my vlog, I still feel very passionately about this book. I do think objectively it is the weakest book in the series and the weakest of the 3 and one of the weaker Cassandra Clare finales, but I still loved it because these characters just mean so much to me, and I did like the plot for the most part. I do just think parts of it were a little bit disappointing. I do think the book was a little bit longer than it needed to be. And, I don't know, there were just some things that I feel like were not great. I mean, obviously in that last clip you could tell that I, like, didn't love some things about the way that the book ended. I would have really appreciated a couple of more scenes or, like, you know, 1 or 2 more chapters to kind of just close everything out and make everything a little bit, like, neater, because it almost felt like too neat without, like, any setup. So I feel like more before the epilogue and after the epilogue would have kind of made things seem a little bit more deserved and would have made the neatness of the ending seem a little bit more plausible, just because it felt like things wrapped up very, very quickly and very, very well. And I feel like there was no setup or kind of like anything afterward, because things can't all just be like good and dandy, you know what I mean? So, I don't know, I do love the book, obviously. I'm still giving it 5 out of 5 stars, but I don't feel like it's going to be at the very, very top of my favorite books of the year list by the end of the year. I feel like it's definitely going to make its way on there, but I don't think it's going to be like Chain of Gold or Chain of Iron, where it really, like, rose to the top. So yeah, definitely a really great book. I do think it was a great finale, like, better than a lot of other finales I've read, just for Cassandra Clare, for my expectations. And after having mulled it over and kind of watched what other people have to say, I definitely feel like I agree with some people's gripes with the book, even though I don't feel like it's enough to really drop my rating down tremendously. I feel like I'm kind of being a little bit more lenient. Like, I probably, in actuality, gave it like a 4.5 or a 4.75, but I feel like I'm giving it 5 stars mostly just because of the characters. Like, I'm kind of ignoring some of the problems that I had with it. Not that I'm, like, gaslighting myself or anything, I just feel like the good far outweighs, like, the very, very few issues that I have with the book, but overall, I absolutely loved it. I'm super, super happy with it, and I'm really happy with the series as a whole. So yeah, that is it for my videos on the Last Hour series. If you've enjoyed this journey, let me know. I really enjoyed doing it, and I really enjoyed this feature film-length reading vlog. If you have made it this far in the vlog, I really, really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it, and yeah, that is it. I would love to know your thoughts on Chain of Thorns, what you liked, what you didn't like, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, all of your thoughts, opinions, and feelings about the book. But yeah, that is it. I really hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you soon for a new video. Bye!